everyone, I'm Councilmember Angel Encinas, and welcome to another episode of Professionals on the Rise, a series where we shine the spotlight on the entrepreneurs and leaders who help continue to make Chandler the community of innovation. Today's episode is all about creativity, not only the kind that adds color to our city, but also connects communities, celebrates cultures, and inspires future generations. I'll be speaking with two incredibly talented local artists who each have a unique story on how Chandler has helped shape their journey and provided opportunities for them to grow their craft and passion. Let's get started right here in studio with our first guest, the very sought after Mr. Miguel Godoy. Miguel, thank you so much for being here and being with us here in the city of Chandler once again.
All right, thank you for having me.
Good, very happy to have you and share your story. We'll get started with our first question here. You've brought art in so many different spaces, from schools, parks, even professional sports. What first inspired you to become an artist?
I'd have to say the first thing that inspired me were my dad's drawings. You know, he grew up in Brawley, California, and was surrounded around Chicano and lowrider culture, and was a product of his environment, and that's what he used to draw. And so growing up, my brothers and my sister, we'd watch him draw. And so that was the first thing that inspired me to become an artist. And then it grew into Marvel Comics. Got really into Marvel Comics. My brothers and I would copy all the Marvel characters. And then I got obsessed with hip hop culture. Mm-hmm. Became a citizen of hip hop culture. First inspired by the Berlin Wall in Berlin, Germany. We were stationed there for 4 years. I'm an Army brat. And so that was my first impression of graffiti art. And so really that kind of soaked up all my creativity for many years. And then had a really great mentors, some great educators in elementary school, junior high, and in high school that really pushed my art past graffiti, past Marvel characters, past lowrider art, more into realism and studying fine art.
Wow, very nice. So you had a little bit of inspiration from all different areas of life and, from history as well. But it sounds like this was kind of like a family, I don't want to say hobby, but this is a family thing that you guys did together. Do your brothers and sisters as well do those types of things, do artistry?
Yeah, they do. So my younger brother's the most talented. He's so creative. He does a little bit of everything: makeup, hair, costume. He does murals, he dances, he sings, he plays music, a little bit of everything. My sister is also very much into crafts. My brother used to draw. And so, yeah, all my family's been creative. My mother is very creative as well. I mean, you can imagine all the holidays around the house that we were always going all out with decorations. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we really learned to kind of own our creative spirit as a family, for sure.
Oh, very nice. Mm-hmm. And I bet you guys motivate each other, inspire each other to come up with other projects in the future.
Yeah.
That's great. Mm-hmm. That's great to have. Yeah. Now let's highlight a project right here in our very own city here in Chandler. Province's Park mural is especially meaningful because of the input from Shumway Elementary students. Miguel, can you share what the process was like and what it meant to work directly with young creatives?
That was such a fun project. I probably need to say that first. And I've done so many, right? But that one, when I think about it, I had so much fun with the kids. And so the process was, applying to a call for muralists to partner with the Chandler Unified School District and Shumway Leadership Academy in particular. And it's not too far from where I live either, which was kind of nice. And so I had an idea of what I wanted to do, right? I had been focusing on text-based art for a while. And when I went to the school and I met with the school leaders, administration, and then I got to work with the students, I scratched all of that because I realized how amazing these kids were. And I really wanted the ideas to be generated from them. And so what we decided to do was to focus on their core values: community, inclusion, empathy. So when you go to Province's Park, the pillars that hold up the canopy, the shade structure for the playground, each pillar is dedicated to one of their core values. And then there's one with childlike stars, and that kind of represents them. They're the Shumway stars. I fell so in love with the way the kids were looking out for each other, with how the teachers treated the kids. I actually got my kids out of the school they were at And now they're at Shenway and they've been thriving.
Wow.
So the process, though, was we held a series of workshops. Imagine working with about 650 school kids and how crazy that could be. And I basically asked them to give me their idea of what their core values meant. And so my homework was to take 650 drawings in crayon and colored pencil and then kind of look for consistent themes. And that's the imagery that we ended up putting on a material called Polytab. And so then I projected their images and created these designs, came back to the kids. They painted it. They're the ones that did the painting. And then I got my college students. At that time, I was adjuncting at Estrella Mountain Community College, where I'm full-time faculty now. And so I got my college students involved. We cleaned up their painting. We came back and installed it and had a really big celebration.
That is a great story.
Yeah, that was that.
Of getting them involved, and especially letting the kids take the charge and truly expressing themselves, and having the foundation of those core values really highlighted through that artwork and stuff, and allowing them, you probably inspired other future artists that are there at Shenway.
Yeah.
So that's a great story. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
A little bit more into, you just mentioned that you are a professor, you teach, you instruct. As a Vision Kids instructor, you're helping to inspire this next generation of artists. What do you hope that your students take away from your classes or your teachings? The first thing that I want them to I think take away is just to know that they're not alone, right? Oftentimes in the creative world, it is sometimes lonely, right? And so when they come to my classroom, they're amongst like-minded creatives. And so I think the fellowship is probably the first thing that I think the students take away. And then there's obviously the technique and the concept that we're instructing and teaching them. But more than anything, just a belief in themselves and a belief in that magic and that superpower that they have as a creative. That's my number one goal, that when you leave my classroom at the end of the semester, that you have that feeling and that belief in yourself. That's great. Mm-hmm. That's great to hear, and that's something that they can take on with them, not only just in artistry, but in different aspects of life. So I like that, right. And I hope they get that very much instilled through your work and through your teachings with them.
Thank you.
Now, Miguel, let's talk about one of my favorite projects of yours, El Valle jersey design for the Phoenix Suns. Okay, this project reached a wide audience outside of Chandler. How did that opportunity come about, and what was it like to see your work on such a large stage?
So the project came through my DMs on Instagram. I can't stress the importance, and I tell my students all the time, be careful, be mindful what you post,
yes.
Right? And so I have always lived by that motto, and so I've always posted my art. And I think after conversations with the creative team there, I think what they were drawn to was the community work, was some of my past murals and some of my paintings and some of the graphic work that I had on my Instagram. And my connection to Chicano culture, my connection to my identity. And I think that's what really drew them to my work. And so they contacted me through Instagram. I didn't believe it at first, right? Because there are scammers out there. I really thought it was too big to be true.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when the message said, we have a lucrative opportunity. I said, oh, that's a big word. And so I actually called the creative director and had a phone conversation with them. And that's kind of what started the project.
Oh, that's very nice. So that's a very important message, is to make sure that you check your direct messages on Instagram, because you never know what opportunities may come from that.
The second part of that question, thinking about the impact that it had to see my work on such a wide scale, I think first of all, knowing how sought after it was, and by big sports networks, and being judged in the top 3 of the whole City Edition run for the NBA. All that was amazing, and those were great, all the accolades, but I think the biggest impact for me was having the city behind it, having the cultura, having our Chicanos behind the mural, because that's really what encapsulated, right, was the lowrider culture, Chicano culture. And for me, that was the biggest impact, to have done something and put something down for the city. So, yeah.
So that's great. Like I said, it's one of my favorite projects of yours, and it's well known across the state, and especially with the Phoenix Suns. It's great to have you spotlighted on such a large arena with that. So congratulations on that. For your young creatives who may feel uncertain about turning their passion into a career, what advice would you give them?
I think it would have to come back to this idea of self-efficacy, right? This idea of believing in yourself. Because oftentimes we have the narrator in our head telling us that we're not good enough, or that we're not the one for that project, or that wasn't meant for us. And I think that voice and that narrator, you just have to be careful and listen to, because there's also another voice, right, that tells you that this is your superpower, this is your God-given ability, and to really embrace it. And so it takes courage, right? And so I think the best advice I can give to young creatives is to really believe in yourself, push past the imposter syndrome, push past the self-doubt, and know that you are worthy of all the amazing opportunities that lie ahead.
Yeah, I feel like all of us at some point in life, whether it's in a career or some professional setting, we become that self-sabotaging person that's like, I don't deserve this, or I feel like I'm not capable or meeting expectations of these certain things. I know I felt that in certain times, but it is re-grounding yourself and believing that, you know, I know this about myself, and re-inspiring yourself and motivating yourself to get to that finish line. So that's great advice to share with them. Now, looking ahead, are there any upcoming projects or goals you're especially excited about?
I've got a couple projects that I'm working on. Aside from growing my teaching, I've been teaching, this is my second year teaching full-time at Estrella Mountain Community College. Feel very fortunate to be in that space as a Chicano professor of art. And really growing my teaching and being able to facilitate more for my students and for the college. That's like the biggest project that I'm working on right now, right? But aside from that, I'm working on a big public art project with the City of Phoenix with a colleague of mine, doing another fun project with the Suns, and then working with a big tech company on another mural right now. And so a lot of stuff behind the scenes that happens outside of my teaching. So.
Miguel, thank you so much for joining us here today in Chandler and sharing your story with us. I want to wish you the best of luck on continuing as an educator here in our community and on your future projects here in Arizona and beyond. Up next, we're going to be heading to the gallery at the Chandler Center for the Arts to meet with another incredible local artist, Ariana Enriquez, whose exhibit, Con Cariño Siempre, with Love Always, beautifully ties family, tradition, and community together. Let's head on over. And now we're at the gallery at the Chandler Center for the Arts with our next artist, Ariana Enriquez. Ariana, thank you so much for being here and welcoming us to your exhibition space.
Oh, of course. I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course, I'm very excited. Your work here is not only visually stunning, but it's deeply personal, sharing stories of your family and culture in such a heartfelt and meaningful way. Con Cariño Siempre, with Love Always, is such a powerful title. Can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired this exhibition and what does it mean to you personally?
Yeah, of course. Con Cariño Siempre, you know, it's kind of an ending to a letter, right? A closing statement. And so I thought that it felt really appropriate for this exhibition since this is a love letter to my family. So I think that title's really fitting. And it's very special to me because it was really born out of these stories that my family shares around the dinner table or in the living room with cups of coffee. And so this has just become such a comforting space for me growing up. And I think I've learned to appreciate it as I've gotten older too. And so I really wanted to translate these familial stories into pieces of artwork.
That is beautiful. And I love how you made it sound, or it is a love letter to your family, an archive of your guys' stories and your sense of expression and showing the rest of the world with that. Thank you for sharing that. Much of your work reflects, again, your family's stories. How do you approach translating something so personal into a public piece of art?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I'm really inspired by the flora and fauna of the Sonoran Desert, but I knew that I wanted the species chosen for these artworks to reflect my family more personally. For example, with the 2 broad-billed hummingbirds that's featured in one of the paintings, they represent my great-grandparents. Hummingbirds have such a deep spiritual significance in my family, especially for my grandma. She sees them almost like a visit from her mother, who has now passed. And so I knew that I wanted the hummingbirds to be featured and to represent my great-grandparents. And for example, the sunflowers are also similar in that they are for my mom, since they're her favorite flower. And they also speak to these deeper symbols of family, since their taproot grows really grounded into the soil, 5 or 6 feet, which is super fascinating. And so I think that it carries the message of being deeply rooted, having firm family values. And so I knew that I wanted these different types of flowers and species to represent my family.
No, and it definitely comes through. And those are very personal representations of things. And that kind of hits me as well too, because my grandmother, she loved hummingbirds as well. And I remember back in the day, in her backyard, she'd have a bunch of bird feeders and stuff, and she just loved hummingbirds.
Yes.
So it's a great representation.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's great, I love that. So Chandler Center for the Arts is such a strong platform for creatives. What does it mean to you to showcase your work right here in the gallery?
Yeah, it's super special. You know, the last time I showed work here, I went to Chandler High, so it's special for that reason alone. But also, I was a student the last time I showed work here as part of like an annual showcase that they do. And so it's a real full circle moment for me to get to show this work here as my first solo gallery exhibition. And, you know, I think I also used to like perform as part of the dance club in, you know, the main auditorium. And so there's just a lot of really special memories for me as a student here. So it's really the perfect space, and I think makes a lot of sense to have my first show here.
100%. Definitely a full circle moment of, you know, being a student here, go Wolves. I was a Wolf myself here, and I also participated in the theater portion as well too. So I was here walking around the CCA as well. So I can only imagine how exciting it is to be here in this space, you know, seeing it so young, and now you're here representing your artwork. I love it. I love it. Okay, let's talk more about your work here in Chandler.
Sure.
You've created murals, gallery pieces, and even traffic box wraps. How do you adapt your creative process when moving between these very different formats?
Yeah, I think that it's a really fun challenge, and one of my favorite parts to being an artist, getting to kind of dip my toes into these different creative facets. So I think the first thing I always ask, you know, when approaching is who is this for? Who is this artwork for? Who is going to see it? Is it a mural that's out in the public that is then for the public? Is it a traffic control box on a street corner that needs to be in the round and maybe reflects more of the neighborhood values around it? Or is it more intimate piece in a gallery that's just for myself or for my family? And so I always like to kind of clarify that for myself in the beginning. And I always love to approach my creative process with a lot of intention behind the designing process. So doing a lot of research and image gathering into what species I'm going to use and what message they're going to convey is always a nice start.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, and definitely, you know, residents might be able to see your wraps around, especially the traffic stops. It's great to be able to piece something together, artwork with something that's within the industry or road work per se, and to, you know, bring beauty throughout our city.
Absolutely.
It's a great combination. Let's talk about another piece of yours that is, you know, probably well known here with our residents here in the city of Chandler. The Commonwealth mural is another piece that many will recognize. Looking back, what does that project represent to you today?
Yeah, that project gave me the permission to pursue public art. It also, at the time, was such a scary, intimidating challenge. And so I think it also helped to prove to myself that I was capable and that I could do it, even though I was afraid, still do it anyway. And I think I owe a lot of thanks to the City of Chandler for giving me the opportunity to create that piece, even though it was my first mural. And I think it also proved that local stakeholders are willing to pay for public art in their cities, which is so important for local artists.
Oh, for sure. And
for the
then this was one of your first big public pieces. You
That's
were
right.
pretty young when that happened, correct? When you
Yes, it
commissioned that?
was in 2020. So actually during the pandemic. Yeah, so that was even a rare experience too, of just kind of working out there when it was more quiet. So it was a real meditative space, and a lot of challenges, I think, were overcome as well.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad that the city was able to bring in local residents, local artists to be part of our downtown beautification projects, Ariana, what role has the Chandler arts community played in shaping your journey as an artist?
The Chandler arts community has played such an integral role into shaping my career as an artist. I am super grateful for all of the calls for art that they put out for local artists, and I think if not for those calls, I don't know if I would have gotten into public art, at least, so earlier when I did. And so I think that that's really cool. I think it's also really great that they trust in emerging artists who have not yet done a public piece of art to try it out and to do it, and to trust that they can put forth a really great artwork that the community is going to enjoy.
Great. I'm happy to hear that not only our city, but our community is very much open in helping you express that and bring that to life. That's great. What advice would you share with a young creative who might be hesitant to share their personal stories through art?
Yes, I would say for a young creative that it can be really scary or intimidating to share your personal story because it is vulnerable. It puts you in a vulnerable place. But I think in that there's also a real beauty because there's points of connection that can be made. I think others can really resonate with your story. So I would say that your story needs to be heard, it deserves to be heard, it should be heard, because it can always, benefit others in a big way.
Oh, for sure. Everyone has a great story to share here. And I'm pretty sure that you're a big inspiration to many of the Chandler High School students here right across the way to be able to see, hey, this is a student that was sitting in these same seats, and look where they are now, being showcased in the gallery right at the Chandler Center for the Arts. So thank you for all of that. Ariana, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and again for sharing your story of your family and your culture with us and the rest of the Chandler community.
Oh, of course. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Of course. Hope to see more from you to come in the future.
Me too. Thank you.
Awesome. As you can see, creativity thrives here in Chandler, and it's because of people who bring their talents, culture, and stories to life in such meaningful ways. I hope you're inspired to pursue your passion. To the audience, thank you for joining us on another episode of Professionals on the Rise.